Welcome to the Tug of Heart podcast on Strong Island Radio. This is the place where we dig deep into the heart to rise in love. So let's join good friends Lori and Marianne as they discuss understanding and living from the heart.
Hello and welcome. Hi, Marianne.
Hi, Lori.
You know, I was just listening to the opening, which I don't usually do, but we didn't have a visual here, so I was listening to it, and it had said, where we dig deep into the heart to rise in love. And so mark this for a moment, because I'm going to get right back to this with you. And what else? Because it's down and up, right? This vertical, which you've kind of got me listening to on your other podcast, Wisdom Window, right?
Yes.
So I just heard that different now. So in a moment.
Sure, because we're talking about that vertical access, right?
Dig
the
deep
digging
to
deep
rise up.
to rise up.
And always and.
Right.
With the heart, there's always an and. Oh my gosh, it's so nice outside. Everything's going as well as it can be expected, and we have high expectations. So that's very good, right?
Yes.
We're returning from talking about the genius of the feminine nature in motherhood. Did you have a good Mother's Day? Have we spoke since then? I guess.
You know what? I did have a good Mother's Day. I really did. It was very simple. And two of my children were home.
Aww.
So that was very, very sweet to spend time with them. And then I had just returned from a visit with my oldest daughter, Emma. And next week I'm seeing my youngest who's graduating. So the sense of the children were present for me. So I know for you, that was really a bigger question and concern for me was, how was your Mother's Day without Seth here this Mother's Day?
It was difficult. But the irony of that is it was more difficult the previous week. And there was this huge lesson for it in me. And that's that I had this real heaviness trying to think about Mother's Day, and had gone into kind of just creatively writing and stuff to sort through it, because I can never process stuff without attributing a meaning, even if it's a meaning in the works. You know how I am.
Yes.
And so I could not let the day come and go. But I was off by a week.
Oh.
Remember I had said like Mother's Day, and I think we even did the show early, it was such a gift that it happened, because part of it I realized was my own projection and buildup. The day wasn't really there, and I was experiencing a day that's really symbolic, was so real and heartfelt the week before that I was off.
Wow. So it's almost like you were able to shed that.
Well, it answered the question that I had been trying to resolve. Maybe we'll have to talk about it another time, but my question was about our expectation and what we create ourselves that cannot be met. And then it just kind of proved it, because I had set up all this stuff and nobody met it for anybody, because nobody was having Mother's Day except me. And I was having this wrestling match in my heart.
You were having your on your own time Mother's Day.
But such is the nature, if you want to, of a mom and of the kind of person that I am, the way that I think and the way that I process. And it's also kind of how we utilize our makeup, our innate makeup, which is what we're talking about today. When we say to each his own, we're talking about intrinsic and I guess extrinsic gifts that we have, the difference between them. And of course, that's just relational. So the intrinsic is the gifts that we're just born with. There's some things about Lori. I came in that way. I'm going to leave that way, just there. Now, I keep having a hard time saying it all of a sudden. The extrinsic ones are gifts that I have that have either been developed in relation to fellow man, or that I have learned, or that I've always had, they are kind of intrinsic, but never came to light apart from a relation.
Yes.
And that's kind of where my thinking is in general about all of this, that most of our gifts, because we had spoke about Mother's Day, and that's kind of where we came to this point. And it's also, we're wrapping up our first season.
We are.
This and probably one
Yes.
more talk.
Mm-hmm.
And it ended up nicely because we're just now talking about unique qualities that people have. And before that, we had spoken of recognition, and that is qualities that make a human human.
Mhm.
So the dignity is this value we have, this intrinsic value for being a human.
Yes.
You cannot take it from somebody. They just have certain attributes that render them human. No question about it. You're a human, I'm a human. Cannot ever take that away from me. But then there's also individual gifts that I have that make me unique among humans.
Yes.
And so today we're kind of looking at just like a mom, there's different kinds of moms, but recognizing, I guess, beyond that initial recognition. And so it's coming from a place where we take the step beyond recognizing this is a human. They have dignity in that they are being, knowing, willing. And now when we start to discover the gifts of another person, to me, it's kind of like we're becoming more familiar with their specific gifts.
Yes,
that we
much
interact
more
with.
intimate in a way.
Right. And so the other is almost, it's not given. I don't want to take anything away from it by saying we give them a benefit of the doubt or we take it on faith that they have this. They are. It's not faith. We know it. And this is even beyond the certainty. This is just a truth. You're born a human. You're not going to ever be a lion.
Right.
And
Yes.
and there's specific things that make you a human. That's it. So now it's talking about the nature of that person's dignity, and it plays out in such diverse ways that we need to make it. So this week, do you even remember how we got to this? Because we were all over the place and kind of landed here. Do you remember how we
got to
talking about this?
Right.
From that?
To the sense of to each his own heart, right? And part of the way we got there was this not even an idea, really, the recognition of the in a way the paradox that you speak of, right? Between this universal collective connection and a sense of all as one, and the very individual specific attachments sometimes we end up developing to that sense of our own gift.
That's right.
Right? And taking ownership of it, which isn't really the course of the heart that we've come to know.
Right.
It's about non-clinging to it and yet acknowledging the very personal, intimate story of your life. And that is the path. It's such a working walk of knowing who you are, knowing your own heart, as well as surrendering to the attachment of this is who I am in my passions and my sufferings,
right?
And passion being suffering,
right?
So,
and don't you think part of the challenge comes from just as a whole, this whole body, one body that we happen to be part of, we've kind of made this, just the term itself, to each his own. We said to each his own heart.
Yes.
But you hear people say to each his own. And there's like a way that it is used above courtrooms in Latin. So it's to each gets their due. There's also this way that the whole kind of, it doesn't keep things orderly, but it's like, it's what I call, you've heard me say before, almost like a unfair peace, or I call it like just an awkward kind of peace. Like it's just keeping things calm, where you pass somebody, I see it one way, you see another, and we're like, well, to each his own. It's kind of dismissive.
It is. And it also speaks to this, part of the universal human, which is we try to create false peace.
Peace, I like that.
By
yes.
really just being like not wanting to get
and
into the
misunderstanding,
confrontation.
misunderstanding peace, right?
Yes, absolutely. So there's an aversion
Right.
to that grit that you can come up against in really feeling the sense of difference.
Right. I was thinking that on the drive in, like what this means to each his own. And one of the things that we came up to, which we'll get to, is how we help one another in doing this. And I was thinking, so what's changed since I've kind of changed the course of how I live, which I keep coming back to. Same for you. We both did it around the same time.
Right.
We've always kind of been interested, but we really, this other level around the millennium.
Yes.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Which I just like that. I feel like very special that it happened around the same time for us in different, couple thousand miles apart. And then here we wound up together at this table. So
Right.
I just really like it. So I was thinking, what's changed about before? And it's hard to remember because that person can be very unfamiliar who we were, even though we are still them, right? Because we haven't just basic laws of nature. And we are talking about order, wit, and the natural world. For me to undergo change requires, I think we talked about this at one point, that something happens to me that makes me different, but I am still me. So Lori has a baby and now I'm a mother, but Lori is still Lori. Or else it was like a switch instead of a change, a movement. But one of the things I was thinking from before, if I can think how to word this, I didn't think it in words, of course, but it was that there were many times that I would give in and I would choose to feel like I was doing good over doing good. I would choose appreciation over contribution.
So
And
more of the
this is the
feeling over
ego.
the action.
And so I would do things like you're a little bit more careful to just even in setting things up. You and I talked about this, just exchange of ideas where you kind of want your stamp on it. A little more like guarding what your own expression is, because that's yours. You own it. You own it.
Right. And that's back to that sense of the attachment
Right.
to it and the profit, even if it's
Exactly.
emotional
Absolutely.
profit that you make
Absolutely.
off of it.
And it's misunderstanding it also, because that expression that you own, you do own it for a very specific reason, and that is to express it and to give to others. And what happens is, while you're holding that, you're holding onto it so tightly that you also are not open to receiving the gifts of others at the same time. So you're very limited.
Right. Because that's back to this thread of relationship that we've been talking about from the beginning. And it's always an exchange. And when you're not in the flow of the exchange, right, then you begin to be cut off from the fullness, the abundance that is available.
One of the things when you and I were talking, I think it was yesterday, we were talking about the exchange. And one of the things that I had told you, but I'm going to have you define it for me.
Sure.
Was
maybe.
I feel like you'll be able to actually.
Really?
Okay.
You have faith
and that
in
was
me,
where
Lori.
I said we learn when we come into the heart that we exchange but not barter our gifts. But I'd like to hear you say it, because I think it needs a kind of your gifts to express it better than I could.
You know what? That was something that I actually sort of gave back to you when we were talking about it, right? Because I said, what is the difference? Like, why not?
Now it feels like I'm quizzing you. What did
No,
you
no,
like?
it's true, right? It is. But what I've come to is that the exchange is within the heart space. For me, it's an energetic exchange that is not really based so much in the physical realm of exchange. And so my association more with barter is more of the material world, where exchange is something that is much more in the eternal realm of energetic.
Yes. I like that.
Gifting and serving each other to, again, keep us not locked in to to whatever material gains we may get, but rather to this walk on the earth plane of assisting each other in the purification of our energy system, so that we can get to the heart. We can get to see from the eye of the heart. Because if we are caught in the place of just being filled up by the questioning and the not knowing and the maybe and the what's good enough and all of that, then we're kind of using up all our energy in that space.
You're right. You're right. When you were saying that it's the questioning and all of the other things, it made me just realize, as you were saying that I think we get caught up in trying to assess the value of who we are and what we have versus, so we're more involved with assessing than introspection.
Yes.
So, and there, it's subtle, but it's very different. First of all, one of the things, if I've learned anything in my life, I would like to also add, this is 100 years between the two of us plus that we have sharing this. But one of the things that I've learned, that I am poor at, and across the board, I'm going to have the guts to say this. I feel the poorest skill most people have is assessing their value. We underestimate or overestimate. And it can change based on our securities, which actually security has so much to do with where we feel we are relationally, and also whether or not what we've learned, so been taught, and also how much healing we've done from any injuries we've had in life. So we're using this measurement that fits on this different plane of healing and wellness, and just that the eye of the heart, where it can see things a little bit differently, versus, but we're taking that gauge and we're applying it to this secular place where the gauge doesn't, this type of measurement doesn't exist here, because we're trying to put what would the value be. So then we could say, well, I'm worth a lot.
Yes.
Okay. And sometimes we feel like that. Sometimes I'm overconfident. And sometimes I could be incredibly gifted at something and I'm just really underconfident. Sometimes I'm falsely humble.
Right.
And I really underestimate. And then so many ways you could go with it. But I think that's part of what happens. But when you have this introspection versus assessment, what you do is you shift from looking at the value to looking at the purpose of what you have and what you are to do with it. What is the purpose of this gift? There was early on, one of the things that I had said when we had talked about, I just remembered this connection and relationships and the heart. I had said one of the keys to what we will be doing down the road is that anybody who wants to participate in this has to understand we redefine prosperity. And prosperity doesn't mean anything really secularly, but you have to, your values have to change. And now I wanted you to talk about this if you can. So when you do this in introspection, you're asking, who am I? Who am I really?
Mm-hmm.
And then it kind of goes into like, okay, now does my life match who I say I am? So the living out of who I feel in my heart I am meant to be. Does my life look like that? That's kind of an introspection where you're like, or at least for me, my experience was like, no, the things I'm contributing to in the real world are not who I feel like I'm meant to be, which was, and we are going to also get to this, teaching and healing, which universally all of our gifts should fall under these two categories. And we have both, but every gift should qualify as one. And I was missing that. That was to be years later, and I didn't realize it. So then we have to think about our interactions with others also for introspection.
Mm-hmm.
How am I doing interacting with others? And a lot of times we look inside ourselves, that's it. But I don't think you can ever measure yourself without measuring your interactions with others. What do you think, Marianne?
Well, I think that, again, it actually goes back to what you brought up when we first started, right? So the vertical axis of digging deep and rising up. The horizontal plane, what I see that as, is our earth walk, right?
Mm-hmm.
From east to west, sunrise to sunset. It's a limited amount of time we have here. Everything that happens in our lives, if in fact we are dedicated to the path of growth, to the path of knowing the heart better, finding that essence of who we are, the face of who we were before we were born, like that eternal spot in us, then everything that happens in our life can lead us inward, good or bad. It's like you said when you were talking about the writing around Mother's Day. Mother's Day was happening outside of you. It led you inward. You had to do a process. From that inward point, we descend down, dig deep down into the root of our being. And then from there, we can begin to rise up and find this more expansive sense of meaning in the scheme of the wholeness of who we are. But that process, right, that work is a twofold process. It's the human coming together with this deeper connection. It's so interesting, right? Like we talk about this sense of oneness to the one, but the one is really a marriage. Like we call it single, but it's not single at all.
No, right.
It's not. It is this beautiful partnership with heart, with God, with spirit, with a sense of just eternal remembering of a path. And so the path goes both ways. And maybe that first point of being driven inward is that central point from which we descend and then rise.
And the center is exactly what we call the heart, our innermost point, our deepest center.
Yes.
And so what do you think about, because this is new to me and it's new to you as you're working it out. But what do you think that means in terms of me and you sitting here? Do we then have a center? Is it overlap, or is it a shared universal center, or is it like when we get it right, it happens? How do you think it happens?
You mean in the sense of the partnership?
When would me and you find ourselves at the cross where the vertical crosses the horizontal?
Right. What is that moment?
Mm-hmm.
What is that moment? Because that moment is really very, very precious.
And there's more than one.
Oh, completely. But it is the treasure. And I know for me, I kind of experience it as really a treasure, a moment to be treasured, where everything else kinds of falls away, and there is a sense of, yes, we are in this together no matter what. And for me, that, like, we are conversations about grief and joy. So the intersection was at this place of loss, emptying, and the willingness to be public with hearts just broken wide open.
Right.
And somehow trusting that the heart would, in fact, hold us and lead us to deeper understanding and connection. And that's all I felt was asked of me.
Right.
Was, can you be dedicated to this
Mhm.
and, just walk forward with
I'm
it?
going to tell you, which I didn't expect to say, but since this is 2 parts, I feel like I have the time to point it out. Mine was a few shows in. I don't know if you remember this day, and it was such crap weather. It was so cold, and
That's right.
I
We were
this is when
in
I
the
came in,
winter, December.
like the first handful of shows I came in and just pretty much cried, and just
Sorry.
like which I still do, but it was even more intense.
Yes.
And a few shows in, I remember I pulled up in the parking lot, and I was sitting there, and I was just feeling a lot of stuff about what we're doing. It was hard to do. This is hard to do. Just being new is hard enough for me, but then on top of that, everything else I was feeling. And at the time, I wanted to just tell you in a very serious way something that you had said I shot down quickly. It had to do with justice, which actually I really love that we come back to this place specifically talking about justice, because we're entering into social participation, which it requires justice.
Yeah.
And not just like a penal code, okay? Not just what punishment.
Restorative.
Yes, absolutely. But what happened is you had said something about justice, and I was like, Marianne, no, stop. And you were like, really? And I was like, no, absolutely not what you said. And I just disagreed. I know it. I'm certain. So then I'd gone home, and I was like, what we say, you have the thought, but then examine the thought, but I did it after the fact. But still,
so what?
It's better,
It's beautiful.
Yeah, but hey, I did it. And when I did, I was like, wait a minute. What she said is exactly right. So the bottom line is, the next time I saw you, my intention was only to let you know, but I wanted to let you know, like, really, thanks for not biting my head off about it, because you gave me that room to ask the question of myself. You didn't say, like, you didn't even really argue your point. You just kind of were like,
maybe
it
right.
sure seems like
you.
It sure seems like it. But I, at the time, was not. I was like, no. So when I did that, I realized I was mistaken. You were right. So I was going to tell you that. I hopped in your car.
Yes.
It was because it was cold. So I was like knocking on the window. Can I come in for a minute? And what happened in the moment, I wanted to tell you this, and I just got flooded that I was at this cross section where I came into this awareness. It had nothing to do with justice, but it was so justice centered also. Everything was just right. I can never explain it. And no, it wasn't. I can't say for me, because I am a me. So I have my gifts. My gifts come with the counter of these gifts, which can be deficits also. I can't say I was even in full trust or anything else at the time, but I just realized, like, here I am. And I was like, Marianne, I want you to know, this is after you had lost the school. You agreed to do this. COVID, so much is going on. You're managing just a ton of things, and you decided to do this. And it came over me, I'm not alone. And this is as I'm at the time more fighting my way out of the deep, and not in a way that, like, I think I'll dig deep and see what beauty's there. I didn't want to be there, Marianne.
Mm-mm.
I was there. It still exists. It's still a place of truth. It's still a beautiful place.
Yes.
But involuntarily being thrust there, you don't have the same appreciation for it. So I just did not. I was trying to be cooperative just out of habit with it. But in that moment, I could feel it. And I gave you this impromptu talk and I started weeping in your car. And I've gone most of my adult life not crying.
Yes.
For the most part. But I just started weeping and I had thanked you. And I said, everything that has happened, the cost of this, Marianne, having to close because of COVID, having so much, I just want you to know in this moment, somebody has everything to gain from this. And it was me. And even if it doesn't seem appropriate, the exchange, right?
Yes.
The trade-off. It is my world right now. When I can't even see if I'm swimming towards light or not as I'm trying to climb my way out. But I was aware that even though I'm going up, it's not this like greased pole, but that there's these sides to it also and support coming from the sides, which I tend to not be very open to. I suffer alone. I'm good at it.
Yeah. Yep, I know that
and
too.
I like the products of it. You get this dramatic works of art and writing and whatever, but this was different, very different, right?
And it was, and it's so marked, that kind of precious moment, because there was a realness about it that even had nothing to do with the articulation of the words.
Right.
There was a realness that could only be understood by the heart. And part of the realness was the presence of this exchange, because I sat, witnessed you broken open in that moment and sort of surrendering to, oh my God, like, I don't know where I am really, and we're going somewhere together. And was able to feel rock steady. Now, for me, I know that I have a very gentle place inside of me. And it's a place that has been scary because I've always associated it with being fragile somehow and almost not real, not of the real earth.
Right.
Like living in some ethereal plane and just being safe there. Earth was not safe because of the level of trauma and suffering, right? But again, in that moment, I felt the gentleness come together with this kind of rock steady presence, and zero doubt that we were doing our pilgrimage. We're going,
I felt
whatever
it,
it is,
after
sister.
having said it.
Yes, and you being able to claim it, like it created a marriage.
It did.
It
in
was
the form
a
of a
beloved.
covenant.
You became a beloved to me in
And
that
it's-
moment, as I became that for you.
The definition of marriage in that sense is the covenant, which is the full self-giving to the other without, what I tell you, like our family's motto is to love with no reserve. You don't
Right.
hold anything back for you. And that's how we started with you talking about us trying to cling to certain things.
Yes.
And not let go. So when you love with no reserve, you let go of everything. And it also, one of the things we had talked about last week or the week before about moms was their ability to be transformational. And what happens is a lot of times a transformation is always already in the works, but it becomes tangible when it's recognized. And in that moment, you had been transforming something in you to me, but it also became tangible in that moment. And I remember specifically, I looked at you and I was like, the revelation happened, even though we had already been doing this. And I was like, it's you. It's you that's doing this. Then
I still don't understand.
And then it went from that to, I was like, as I got more comfortable after saying it the first time, I'm like, it could only be you. Because and you know how I knew? Because we were at the intersection.
Yes.
And that's what, so my follow-up was, it could only be you, Marianne. I don't know how to explain it. I was fumbling. I'm going to let you finish out with some thoughts, because we are going to have a second part to this. And I didn't plan on taking such a detour. It just kind of, feelings. We always have to make room for feelings.
No, and I actually love it because you brought us back to the very, very beginning, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this process of emptying out and filling up, and grief and joy.
And by you doing this, okay, and me saying it's you, it had to be you, it raises and then a marriage, a covenant, full self-giving, it raised, we're here voluntarily. We are to this day, but it also heightened the importance and what was required of you. And I do want to say that the flip side is that by doing that and identifying you and saying, this is what you are doing, we unveiled some of your gifts.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome. You like how I want to take that back now and make it about me? No, but this is also how our gifts come to light sometimes.
To be seen by the eye of a heart
mm-hmm.
of another.
It's just by, and we talk about this, just by being named can change everything.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Go ahead and tell me your finishing thoughts.
I just think that I'm feeling somewhat sentimental, Lori.
I think I was too, because it's coming to the end. I do want to try to get back to the nuts and bolts that I like.
Yes.
For our second part of this, because it's important.
Good.
In the same way we painfully talked about what a connection means,
right.
We're kind of there again, because there's so much direction that we're headed in that does require the getting it right.
Yes.
Or at least not screwing it up so bad that we send somebody down a wrong dark path alone.
And listen, I feel like it has taken me the course of however many months we've been doing this, 30 shows, for me to really come to deeply understand within my heart the sense of order that you speak of, right? The importance of building up, because in what I'm finding as I'm able to surrender more, right? To let go, to not cling. It's such
That's
a
how
process.
I say with you being all over the place, how I had to let go, but I've benefited. I'm wealthy for it.
Right, same. But as I do, I'm starting to see how the more mundane world does submit
absolutely
to the higher order. It is obedient to it, and it does start to
it
unfold.
Bows to the supernatural.
Yes,
that's the source
I
of it.
See it. That is purely like a beautiful new sense of faith for me, and I am very grateful for that.
I love hearing that, because it's one of those things that I'm the equivalent of the guy on the street corner wearing a sandwich sign. It's like the natural points of the supernatural.
No,
order and all.
And
order
I'm all about chaos.
Order.
You find creativity.
Yes.
In
but so I'm the crazy, and sometimes maybe smell a little like him. That's all right too.
Yeah.
Where I have that sandwich where I'm like, listen, order. But so it's good that this is the thing that I want, if anything, for people to understand. We have each stayed firmly planted in who we are.
Yes, we're rooted.
So we have surrendered to being open to the gifts only of the other, but never open to being changing who we are at our core, because that can't be changed.
That's the exclamation point. Submitting to the gifts of the other,
right, while
remaining rooted in
our unique heart. And that's how we've kind of survived this, because we are,
different.
We are just different. And I can't even believe some of the things that are family talks that were taboo that we're just talking about at dinner now. And we're like, who are we? And we're Marianne. No, but in a good way.
I've got some Lori coming my way, which is
but this is
amazing.
But this also points to what you and I have been working on kind of in the background. And I think we're going to get to it this next season. And that's that there's a new way where we're not caught up in winning individual little battles and ideas, and we want to have this and the tally and trying to be right about something, but instead saying just clean the slate, and this calls for something new, not another change, because all these changes aren't helping humanity.
Yeah,
it's a complete new way, and that's where we're headed. But we'll continue this right where we left off with where we're headed. Thank you for joining us, and especially if you were able to listen to the little tangent there. You can like and share our podcast. You can like Strong Island Radio. Hi, Bobby. We're here with Bobby.
Hello.
Who has been on this journey. Bobby, thank you so much. He's really encouraged us when we've even when we do stuff like this, just kind of wander.
Yes.
No, this is great. And just want to let everybody know, please, share this podcast, because these ladies really open up their hearts every week. And this could just help so many people. So we just ask that, share it with your loved ones, share it with your friends. I'm really proud of you ladies. You really come a long way.
Thank you, Bobby.
And just like we said, I am going to say this part, in addition to what Bobby said. I haven't done a podcast, and I'm not, as people can tell, like the best speaker, but get comfortable in the messiness of other people's differences, guys. And there's so much to be learned. And also, if we're really messing up, let us know. Help us.
Yes.
We're here also to be helped.
For sure.
And to do it.
To be in the conversation.
That's right. It's really just an open conversation and trying to get to it. So until next time, we'll finish this out. To each his own heart. Thank you very much, and please farewell.